And the man, to be frank, he lost his marbles. Lost all of them. Not one was left. Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright y'all, so real quick before we start, I just want to say shout out to my mama for being born on today. I really wish that she was here for me to be able to tell her happy birthday in the physical world, but yeah, she's not. And I really still can't believe almost 5 years later that she really checked out on us, but happy heavenly birthday anyways. I'm not really even sure if I believe that she can hear me or not, but nonetheless I talk to her anyways because it's a way that I cope. So happy birthday, mom. But yeah, with that out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and hop straight into today's video. And if you've been here for a little while at this point, then you know that we are going from the traps to the burbs of America in alphabetical order, so from Alabama to Wyoming. And today we have made our way to Indiana, and we are specifically focusing on Evansville today. And this is where Deborah Jean, aka Debbie, and her husband Matthew Eric, who went by his middle name of Eric, were a young married couple with 2 kids named Lindsay and Seth Wrinkles. Now, Debbie Wrinkles was described as a beautiful, fiery redhead who had a loving and caring personality and whose top priority was her children. Debbie absolutely loved being a mother to Lindsay and Seth. And Eric Wrinkles was described as a man who loved to go hunting, and he liked working on cars, and he was actually really good at it. So much so that he was able to open up his own business that he operated out of his garage, you know, working on cars. I think it was carburetors that he worked on. There was a specific part of the car that he specialized in working on. And you know, I'm not a cars girl. I don't know cars at all. So yeah, I can't remember if it was the carburetor or not, but it was one of them parts that he specialized in. Nonetheless, as most stories go, Debbie and Eric's marriage was all good in the beginning. But you know, as time went on, problems gradually arose. And it was said that Debbie was the more financially responsible adult in the house, while Eric was more or less just a reckless spender. And their opposite financial habits caused many of arguments within their relationship. Again, as most of us know, frequent arguments often, not always though, but often do tend to lead to an escalation to physical violence. And sadly, this is the case in Debbie and Eric's marriage. And according to their daughter Lindsay, this was like a mutual DV relationship. So sometimes Debbie was the initiator and Eric would reciprocate, while other times Eric was the initiator and Debbie would reciprocate. So basically, they was throwing hands with each other. They was going toe to toe, blow for blow. But the difference between Debbie and Eric was that Debbie's violence was strictly directed towards her husband, Eric. Eric, on the other hand, while his physical violence was only directed towards Debbie, there was definitely some mental and verbal abuse that took place from him to the kids. And it got to a point where everybody in the house was pretty much terrified of Eric, because it was like they was walking on eggshells. One minute Eric was cool, calm, collected. He was being a great dad, being a good husband, just, you know, showing no signs of him being about to have a conniption. And then the very next second, just the smallest thing would ignite him and he would fly into a rage. And this pattern of behavior in Eric started to escalate to the point where Eric would actually threaten to kill Debbie. And even though Debbie never really wanted to believe that Eric would do something like that to her, there were times when he had action behind his words. Because there was one time when Lindsay heard her parents arguing, and she looked in on her parents and she saw her mother facing a wall with her dad standing behind her mom holding a pow to her head, just threatening her, saying stuff like, I could do this, I should do this, you don't want to keep pissing me off because I'm going to do this. And anybody can imagine how frightening that would be, not only for Lindsay to have seen, but for Debbie to have to go through. And there's no telling how many times he pulled his firearm on her, seeing as how Lindsay only saw it that one time. But that don't mean that he wasn't just doing this on a regular basis. So yeah, now it's not really clear to me when this started, but it is stated that at some point during their marriage, Eric has started dibbling and dabbling the la droga, right? He started dibbling and dabbling the drugs. And I'm not not talking about the half legal kind. No. We talking about the stuff that'll have you on intervention. The stuff that was on there, like meth. We talking meth, okay? And it's believed that a lot of his rage and erratic behavior stemmed from his use of meth. But as terrified as Debbie was of Eric, by 1994, she was just over it. And she really just couldn't deal with Eric no more. Not only for herself, but for her kids as well, because she saw what he put her kids through. She knew that they knew what he put her through. And she just didn't want that for her and her kids no more. So Debbie packed up her, Lindsay, and Seth, and her and the kids went to stay with one of her friends. Now, Seth was a young child when all of this was going on. I believe he was like 6 or 7 years old. But Lindsay, she was a teenager at this point. So she understood everything that was going on. She understood that they were running away from her father. She understood that her father was a dangerous person. And she understood that her mama was scared of him. And Lindsay, just going through daily life with her dad, was terrified of him as well. Now, I don't have Seth's perspective on any of this and how he felt, if he was scared or not, but for sure, Debbie and Lindsay were terrified of this man, and they did not want him to know where they were. So when Debbie left with the kids, she didn't tell Eric where she was going. Unfortunately, though, he did end up finding out where she was staying at. But fortunately, though, she found out that he found out before he was able to get to her, and she packed up the kids and left again. So when Eric came to find them, they wasn't there. They had already packed up and left. And this time when they left, they went to stay with Debbie's younger brother, Mark Fulkerson, and his wife, Natalie. Now, I'm going to refer to Mark as Tony for the rest of this video because he goes by his middle name, well, a nickname for his middle name, which was Anthony. So Tony, short for Anthony, okay? So when I say Tony, I'm talking about her younger brother, Mark. And Tony and Natalie welcomed Debbie and the kids with open arms. And they still living with Tony and Natalie when divorce is filed for on June 20th, 1994. Now, I read and seen two different things. I've seen that Eric is the one who filed for divorce on June 20th. And I've also seen that Debbie was the one who filed for divorce on June 20th. But whether it was Debbie or whether it was Eric, somebody filed for divorce from the other. And at some point after the filing of the divorce, Debbie had ended up getting a protective order against Eric because he was going around everywhere trying to find out where she was at, going to her job, going to friends' houses, yada, yada, yada. And she was obviously uncomfortable, afraid, and was like, yeah, no, we're going to have to get a protective order because no. But despite this protective order, she would have to see Eric again because on July 20th, 1994, they had a provisional divorce hearing set. And during this provisional divorce hearing, they had actually come to an agreement. And that agreement was that Debbie would drop the protective order against Eric and that Debbie would maintain custody of the kids. However, Eric would have reasonable visitation. So she couldn't just be like, yeah, you about to see them once a year. Like that, unreasonable. It was more like, yeah, you could probably see them every other weekend or twice a week or however that went. It was just like, you got to be reasonable, Debbie. And they even made plans to meet up later on that day at like a McDonald's or something so that Eric could see the kids. And everything was all good and dandy. Everybody was in agreement when they left this meeting. However, Debbie had just endured a long ass day. She had a long day in court, been dealing with the kids. She was stressed about the divorce. Debbie was tired. And it wasn't really clear to me whether she just decided to not go or if she had fallen asleep and missed it. But whatever the case was, she missed the meeting with Eric. And once he realized that Debbie wasn't coming, Eric headed back home and he called Debbie at her brother's house to be like, hey, yo, what happened? Where you was at, girl? What the fuck? But he wasn't able to get in contact with her. So when Debbie found out that Eric was trying to get in contact with her, she tried to get in contact with him to potentially reschedule the meeting to just explain like, hey, bro, I fell asleep. Hey, bro, I was tired. My bad. Whatever. But he, too, did not answer the phone when she called back. And Eric pretty much just felt like she wasn't holding up her end of the bargain. And he was pissed. And so he decided to take matters into his own hands. And the man, to be frank, he lost his marbles. Lost all of them. Not one was left. And in the early morning hours of July 21st, around roughly 2 a.m., Eric, with his .357 Magnum and knife, headed to the Fulkerson's house dressed in camo and face paint. And when he got there, he jumped over a fence in their backyard, cut their phone lines, and kicked in their back door. Now, the sequence of how everything happened might be a little bit off, but no matter the order in which they happened, they happened. So once Eric kicked in the door to the Fulkerson home, he literally just went on a rampage through the house. So in the master bedroom, he encountered Tony, who was asleep with him and Natalie's 3-year-old son, Matt. And this is where Tony was shot and killed by Eric in front of his son. So Debbie, hearing all this commotion, she wake up. And Lindsay, being in the bed with her mama, she wake up too. But Debbie, she owned it. Debbie like, oh hell no, what the hell is going on? So before she even really know what's going on, Debbie goes and grabs her gun. And as Debbie is walking towards the hallway, she sees Eric. And initially she confused as fuck as to why he's there in face paint and camo. But it became abundantly clear to her that he was there on some bull. And without thinking twice, Debbie shoots Eric. Unfortunately though, it wasn't center mass and it didn't hinder Eric in the slightest. All it really did was piss him off even more. And so he pointed his gun at Debbie, and while he's pointing his gun at Debbie, their daughter Lindsay is pleading to her father to not kill her mother, and he basically tells Lindsay to shut up and proceeds to shoot Debbie right in front of her. So instinctively, Natalie runs away and she runs to the house phone where she tries to call the cops. However, the phone lines, like I told y'all, had been cut by Eric prior to him entering the home, and so she was unable to do so. And being that there was no dial tone, Lindsay's next thought was to get to a neighbor's house quickly. And prior to him shooting Debbie and Tony as well, he had shot and killed Natalie near the front door as she was trying to save not only her life but also the life of Debbie and Tony's niece Tracy, who was also staying with the Fulkersons. And in later interviews, Tracy said that her aunt saved her life because she was asleep on the couch. She had no idea what was going on until Natalie woke her up and physically pushed her out of the door as Eric was shooting at them. So like I said, Lindsay was trying to run to a neighbor's house and she ended up running past her uncle and her aunt on her way out of the house. She was able to make it to a neighbor's house where they did call the police. And when the police got there, they seen that pretty much every adult in the house had been murdered. But fortunately, all of the kids had been unscathed, at least physically, because I'm pretty sure this took a mental, well, I know that this took a mental toll on each and every one of them that was there that night. So the investigation started, and very quickly after it started, they captured Eric, who was hiding out at one of his cousin's house, and he was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. He definitely pleaded not guilty, and at the trial, he tried to blame his actions on a meth-induced coma, if you will. Now, while we all know this crime should have never happened just because it should have never happened, other people feel like it should have never happened because Eric should have been in some type of psychiatric facility at the time of the murders, because 2 weeks prior to the murders, his mom had admitted him into a psychiatric facility because of his erratic behavior. And the people at the psych facility pretty much turned him around and was like, yeah, nah, he don't fit our criteria, so he can't come here. So then he ended up being hospitalized somewhere else where he was actually kept and evaluated for 3 days. But the psychiatrist who was evaluating him determined that Eric wasn't gravely disabled, and so they released him. But nonetheless, on June 14th, 1995, Matthew Eric Wrinkles was found guilty of all 3 murders and was sentenced to death. But before his execution, he did end up appearing on the Oprah Winfrey Show, where he had the opportunity to apologize to Natalie and Tony's kids, Matt and Kim, as well as their niece, Tracy. And he did say sorry, but in said apology, he told Kim that she was so beautiful and that she looked exactly like her mom. And I don't know why, but it did not sit well with me. Him telling this young lady that she looks exactly like the mother who he took away from her, it just didn't sit well with me. I can't really explain why, but I didn't like it. But yeah, Eric ended up getting executed on December 11th of 2009. And Lindsay and Seth did go see him prior to his execution, but Lindsay did not attend. I'm not sure if Seth attended or not, but Lindsay said that she had made peace with what her father had done, and she had also made peace with the fact that he was executed, and she started building her life again, and she is now married with kids of her own. And yeah, it seems as though she's doing well for herself now. However, Seth, on the other hand, we cannot say the same thing for, because it appears as though after his father's execution, and probably even before, he was on a downward spiral. And according to the news, he had ended up getting jammed up on some robbery and drug stuff just a couple months after his father's execution. And then in July of 2020, they was looking for Seth again because he was on the run for attempted murder. And this attempted murder happened damn near 26 years to the day that his dad murdered his mom, aunt, and uncle. So I feel like it's safe to say that Eric's actions affected Seth in a negative way. And that's not to say that he probably wouldn't have been doing all this stuff had his dad not committed this egregious crime. Is it egregious? This terrible crime. But I feel like it fucked him up. I do feel like it plays some part in the trajectory of Seth's life. But Seth did end up getting apprehended and charged with the attempted murder, and he was ultimately sentenced to 20 years in prison. So that's where he is now. And I don't know, just it's so crazy to see how one person's actions can affect so many lives. Like, it's just so selfish. And then just to think about poor Lindsay, she lost her mama, she lost her daddy, her auntie, her uncle, and then now she turned around in 2020 and lost her brother as well. I just feel for her, because damn. And even though Seth tried to kill somebody, I feel for him too, because this affected him as well. But he still didn't have to go try to kill nobody, though. I'm just saying. Thankfully, this person survived, but now they have to deal with trauma. So yeah, yeah. I don't know, y'all. That's all I got for today's case. Thank you all so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And where are we going to be next week? We did Illinois, Indiana, Iowa. Oh, we're going to be in Iowa. We're going to be in Iowa. But yeah, are we in Indiana? Yes, we are in Indiana. But as time went on, problems gradually arose. And their opposite financial habits is oh my gosh, not showing any signs of I'm about to spaz out. Or is that, do we say that anymore? Because I heard that we don't say spaz. And it's believed that a lot of his rage and erratic behavior stemmed from his youth. No, not his youth. I know nothing about this man's youth. However, fortunately, excuse me. His name is Mark Fulkerson, and his wife, and Tony and Natalie welcomed Mark, and no. And Tony and Natalie welcomed Eric, no, they didn't. This candle over here pisses me off. Y'all see how bright this is? Look at how dull that one is. And he decided to take, there we go again.